Welcome to the Widener Sport and Event Management Podcast. Your host is Colin Murt, and today we have a really exciting episode for you. We are bringing you a 2-1 special, talking with two great guests in one episode. First, we will be talking with Issac Taberner, who is a visiting professor from University of Vic. Issac has a passion for sport and event management and is currently working in the sports tourism industry. Our second guest is a very familiar face in the Widener Business School, Mr. Brian Larson. Professor Larson started teaching at Widener in 1999 with a focus in marketing and sport and event management. He has positively impacted so many Widener students through the years, and we are lucky to speak with him today. Let's get to our first guest, Issac Taberner.
So Isaac, how are you?
Hi, pleasure being here.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you. So for the viewers, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name is Issac Taberner. I am from Barcelona in Spain, and I'm a visiting scholar in the Widener for this semester, mostly related to sport and event management major.
So now, because this is the Sport and Event Management podcast, for you, I think you give us a unique perspective because you're somebody who has seen what the industry is like in Spain, but now also you're seeing what it's like in America. So kind of just to start off, are there any big differences in the sport and event management industry that you have seen between those two countries?
I would say there are a lot of difference, but maybe the most important one is about the show and the entertainment. Because in Catalonia, in our region, in Barcelona, people are very focused on what's happening on the field or on the court, so they are very interested about the result and the final outcome of the team. And they get really mad if their team loses or doesn't perform good. And I have the impression that in here, the game is the excuse to have a good time with your family, with your friends, and it's more like an entertainment option or a show. So I think that is the most important difference between, or in my perception, between what happens in here and in Catalonia.
What's your favorite team back in Spain?
I have to say it's FC Barcelona, and
Okay.
I'm a soccer guy, but I would say
So
it's
if FC
Barcelona.
Barcelona loses, you got a bad week.
Yes.
You're not
yes.
happy.
Maybe I remember some years ago that I had to go with my friends to a party, to a club, and FC Barcelona lost their game maybe 2 hours before I had to go, and I didn't want to go, and I didn't go. So this is the kind of the relationship that hard fans in Barcelona have with the team.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's kind of building into the next topic we wanted to get into. So that's one challenge, obviously, in the sport and event management is because we can't control, the result of the games. We can only put on the best event for the fans. So, in your perspective, outside of obviously what you can't control of the result of the game, what's the biggest challenge you have faced in organizing events in Spain in that culture?
Okay, I think that's a very good question, and it has been very hard for me and for the people who I work with to organize events, understanding the complexity of all the agents and stakeholders involved in organizing these experiences, because you have to align their interests, you have to be aware of what they want and deliver a good experience for the customers, but aligning all these providers and these companies. So I think that is the most complicated part. But it's also very satisfactory when you get these things done, because everyone is very proud of being part of that. So it's hard at the beginning, but I think it's rewarding at the end.
Very interesting. Now, the thing with you in reading your bio that I thought was so interesting was this organizing of these outdoor sport experiences. I thought that was something that I have never seen, at least in America in my experience. So I thought that was something that was very interesting just about you personally. But I was also blown away that, it said that there were over 90 scheduled, outdoor sport experiences. To me, that seems like a lot. That seems like a lot of coordination on your part to make sure all those things run smoothly. So I know that's a lot, but if there's something, maybe just a lesson in that you could give us that you learned from doing all that coordination on that scale?
I would say that especially when you have to manage all these event organizers and all these people, you could spend a lot of time planning and designing. Oh, this will be the best way to do it or the best approach. But I think what you have to do is action. Okay, it's okay to analyze what happens, and it's also okay to plan. But there's a moment that you need to take action and to see how it performs to adjust. So you are not trying to get the perfect event or the perfect product, which you also want that is a good quality event and a good quality product. But especially what you want to do is keep running the wheel to analyze what's working, what not, and then improving constantly with all these organizers and also understanding what the customers want because it's also important. So most of the times we only focus on the behind the scene part, but the main actors in this case are the sports and are the participants. So you have to consider what they think and what they want and what they expect. And once you have done and once you have organized these events, you get a lot of information of what it works for them.
Mm-hmm. I think that's also a really interesting point you bring up about kind of assessing what the customer wants and what they appreciated out of the experience and then now what they are looking for in the next experience. And our next question kind of goes into that in how do you personally, what's the process you go through to kind of reimagine events, so to speak? Because, if a customer comes in, let's say they choose kayaking, they want to go on a kayaking trip. Well, the next time they come, they're not going to want that same kayaking trip. They're going to want something else. Yep. Maybe not necessarily something that is bigger and better, but just something different. So how do you kind of challenge yourself to keep thinking differently, keep reimagining the experience so that the customers really can have the best experience?
I think a good way to improve these experiences is to get exposed to other kinds of experiences in another industries. Because in our case, we sell sports experiences, but maybe we can learn something about tourism experiences or hospitality experiences, or maybe with a non-related industry. Maybe we can learn something that Netflix does to improve the experience of the viewers. And okay, what can we learn about what are they doing? And for example, inspired by Netflix, we design personalized experiences based on participants' preferences. So it gives a lot of information in advance to us to plan the kind of activity and the guidance that we need to provide to the customers. So I would say getting a lot of exposure and asking to the customers, because if you ask them in a quantitative way, also with forms or surveys of satisfaction, but also when they are performing the activity, it's okay, what do you want to do? And I think in combining all these things, you can provide a unique experience, and maybe a customer that has come before to your activity gets another perspective and is also more satisfied and more willing to recommend it to their friends, family, or whoever.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, obviously your passion and your knowledge for this industry is evident, and I know our viewers just got a lot of information thrown at them. What I kind of want to go into next is why, the why behind that. So what is it about the sport and event management industry and space that really attracted you and interested you and made you want to pursue a career?
I don't imagine describing myself without involving sports. So I have been involved in sports since I was a little kid. I play handball. So playing handball, which I know it's not very common in the United States, but playing handball, but also getting a lot of exposure and through following broadcastings or following teams about any kinds of sports. So I really need sports in my life. And I think when I was studying a sports science degree, which is my undergrad was about sports science with a specialization in sport management, I discovered that all these experiences and all these sports need to be managed, need to be marketed. So I think that in this time I realized that my passion for sports and my curiosity about marketing and how to produce services aligned. And I think that's how I got into this field.
Yeah, well, I definitely think you're the right man for the job. No doubt about that. So, last question I have. So, obviously, for us, us being in Mr. Larson's class, seeing you come from Spain to America for a young guy, it just seems like, you're doing so much, you're already successful doing all these things. But for you personally, moving forward from this point, what would a successful career in sport and event management look like for you? And, where does that take you?
I would say for me, success in this industry means being happy and being comfortable with all the things you do and being surrounded by good people, work in a good environment, and have challenges all the time. For me, it's very important to be challenged. So when I have challenge ahead of me, it's the best motivation that I can have. And I also feel very good at starting new projects or starting new initiatives. And the day I don't get that, I will quit this industry.
See.
But I don't think it's going to happen because this industry is very challenging and it's spectacular.
Got it. Well, listen, I really appreciate you coming out to talk with us today. I know I learned a ton. I'm sure our viewers are going to learn a ton from this. And
Thank
so
you for
really
having me
appreciate
and
it.
for the invitation.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.
After the commercial break, we'll be back talking with our second guest today, Brian Larson.
Hey Widener, come show your pride at Widener Night at the Wilmington Blue Rocks game on Friday, April 22nd at 6:35. The night will feature a matchup against the Hickory Crawdads and will be followed by a fireworks show. It'll be sure to be a great night for the Widener community. Be sure to show out.
So we are here with the man, the myth, the legend, Dr. Brian Larson, the man who had the vision of this podcast series. So we're very lucky to have him as our guest today. Dr. Larson, could you start off with telling our viewers a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got to Widener, kind of how it's been since you've been here?
Sure. Thanks, Colin. Well, thanks for hosting me today. This is actually enjoyable to see this working out. Brian Larson is the name, and I am a professor of marketing and director of the sport management program at Widener. I came out here with my family in '99, so we've been out decades now. I originally came from more the middle of the country, where my training was in business and marketing. So, unlike your last guest, who kind of approached this field of sport management education from the sport management side, I kind of came in from the professional training on the business side and was introduced through some research projects we had and got into the sports side. I always grew up around sports, but wasn't actively involved. We can talk about that more as a background, but that's pretty much how I came in. I kind of came in, and as I got more and more into this project and started working with exciting students like you guys, and we have all these industry friends, we saw more and more opportunities to develop, to grow, and build things like this, and build programs and internationalize the program and so on. So that's it. One thing led to another, and here we are 20 years later, sitting on a successful and growing program that's pretty exciting.
Very exciting. It was very exciting. So for you, what was it about, teaching students that really made you decide, I want to be a professor? What was it about that excited you?
Well, probably the same thing that excites maybe you as a student, Colin, when you're in a class and sometimes a light bulb goes on and you want to know more. Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about it that way. I can't get enough of that. I love wondering, what if we did this? What if this idea, this way of thinking was applied to this model? We have guest speakers in our class, and they expose the students and me to this idea, this new way of thinking, and it just weighs on my mind, and I just love to think about this stuff. So when I can be part of it. It's truly a blessing if I can ever be part of it, where I can deliver that passion to students. And I see it. I see students, maybe not always on Friday morning at 8 a.m., but I generally, you can see students just love it, and you're the energy, and to talk to students years later who said that, I never really thought about something this way until that's there's nothing like it.
Yeah, truly a lifelong learner.
It
Never stop asking questions.
never stop.
Never stop. So obviously that's why you love and got into teaching. Kind of turning off that, what has been the biggest challenge of your teaching career? And also then, how did you work to overcome that? Whether that be personally, something with the environment, anything.
Well, the biggest challenge is probably as a professor at a university, that you're kind of in this unique situation where I've always seen it as I'm a bit of an entrepreneur, in that Widener hired me to work in an area, marketing and sport and event management. And they basically gave me a key and a laptop and a password and said, all right, it's yours. And we build these classes, and we try to bring in activities that, you're handed a textbook, and you can do it one of two ways. You can either go through and have everyone, okay, turn to chapter 3, and we're going to read it. We're going to answer the questions at the back. Then tomorrow we're going to go over chapter 4. Or you can do something with it.
Yeah.
You can say, okay, you guys can read chapter 3. That's great. And then we're going to go through a few of the ideas, but I want you to do this project, and we're going to bring in some industry people, and Widener has actually let me do this. But that has also driven me a bit crazy, because we don't have an answer key at the back. Mm-hmm. In our own class, we have a project with the Wilmington Blue Rocks. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but we have an obligation to bring out 100, 200, 300 additional fans. And we're building this as we're going through it. I'm going through it the first time. I have an idea of how to do it. You guys probably don't, but you've got enough faith in the process that we're all doing it together. We're bringing in our experts. And that's the type of stuff that kind of keeps me up at night a little bit, if I'm being really revealing, because I don't know the answer. It's so much easier just to, chapter 3, open your book. Here's a quiz. You bring in an international visiting scholar. That's quite a bit of extra work. The benefits so rich, but there's no script for it.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that Widener has let me do a number of these things, but it's easily the most difficult thing is you take it upon yourself to try something new, and because it's new, there's no script.
Yeah, I think that's what I find interesting about you, is that, like you mentioned before, how you're always asking questions, kind of that open mind of curiosity, always wondering, could this be different? Could this change? And I think what's interesting is, now that you're a teacher within the sport and event management industry, it's an industry with a ton of variables that changes on a dime.
Yep.
And like we mentioned with Issac before, you can't control whether the team wins, loses, rains, snows, none of that. So all those questions, like you said, all these things have to be going through your head at all times, because you don't know what could happen. And I think maybe that is the answer, but for you, is that kind of variability, is that what is so interesting to you about sport and event management, or is it something else?
Yes, I love the unpredictable nature of this field. It also, truthfully, does drive a person a little bit on the nervous side, but there are different fields that if you don't enjoy a bit of ambiguity, you should probably go into. My wife by training is in accounting, and she's really good at it, but she's very comfortable when you draw 2 lines underneath the debit and the credit columns and they balance out. And that that is something that I don't enjoy nearly as much as she does. I kind of am comfortable with a little bit of ambiguity, that where the answer doesn't quite necessarily always depend on every action you take, because you can do everything perfectly and the Jets still don't fly over perfectly at the end of the national anthem just because the singer went a little long or a little short. Okay, well, we did everything we could. Okay, well, yeah, I'm okay living with that. And I'm okay with, the other night we went to a Sixers game. Sixers within just a hair's breadth of winning, and they didn't, and it just turned the whole game kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
But you go, hey, that's what you can't control. You still make sure you have the fireworks and the cheerleaders, and I enjoy it probably because you don't know quite what's next.
Yeah. Hopefully the Sixers can make a deep playoff run.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's next, but
That's close.
Can't control that.
Yeah.
So now we have a lot of young professional viewers out there. The question for you would be, for anybody out there looking to get into the sport and event management industry, what would be the best piece of advice you could offer them to set them up for future success in that industry?
Be a sponge and absorb things that are going on, but absorb it from a professional point of view, through the lens of why are they doing this? Ask questions. While I think a lot of people enjoy watching sports and they kind of want to see their home team win, that's great, but understand there's a lot that goes into the orchestrating of that event, and ask those questions. Go, I wonder how they did that. I wonder why they did that. I wonder what the revenue stream is. I wonder what that's doing to the brand. So take your training, keep applying it, and the biggest thing is just do. Volunteer, intern, look for jobs that you're going to get a chance to network. More jobs will probably pay better initially, and there are probably other jobs that'll pay you better. But think about the long term and just get involved.
It's a great answer. It's a great answer. So last question here, and I think it's going to be a great question because
I'm sure it will be.
You are so open-minded and curious. So picture us, we're 20 years down the line. So it's 2042.
So you're in this chair.
Maybe, well, these chairs may not be. Who knows what will be here. So hopefully it'll still be here. So in 20 years, what do you think the sport and event management industry will look like? I know that's a big question.
Wow.
What do games look like? What kind of services will be provided? What's the general experience? But with what you know based on current trends and where things are going, where do you think this industry will be in 20 years?
Well, sport and entertainment as an industry will always survive. I mean, that's one industry because we as humans are insatiable listeners to stories. We can't get enough of how the Sixers built up from nothing, from an 11-win season to getting this close to the brass ring, or the Eagles and the Philly special. And we love stories. And sports, nothing tells a story better than sports because it's unscripted. No one's writing it. It's not over until it's over. There are rules that people play within, and it's just the human drama played out. And so we're always going to be eating it up. Now, the delivery model is going to change, right? The type of screens we have, will we have screens in 20 years, or will we have, I don't know, we're going to have some forms of distribution that are going to change drastically. A few years ago, the only way you could catch an event was basically sit in the seat in an arena, or you watch it on network. Okay, well, those options have just exploded. You don't need to go to the game to get a great experience. You can watch it, stream it on some digital device. I think that trend of decentralizing distribution is going to continue. I think we're going to be able to pick up more sport and events in a number of ways. I think it's probably a ripe environment for smaller sports to gain traction through these new modes. Even some of these small scale sport events that we talked about in class recently, I think we'll find followers internationally because we can follow small events in Spain and corners of the UK. We never used to be able to. I think the viewer is going to be able to find her or his story as a spectator almost anywhere. I think distribution is probably going to be the main player in changing the way we consume sports. Likewise, I think some of our partners we're learning how to deliver the personal engagement as well. Isaac is over here studying how American sports are distributed in an arena. Europeans, for the most part, still kind of focus on what's going on the field. Mm-hmm. And we've turned it into a spectacle.
It's production.
It's a production.
Yeah.
It's a production from parking lot to parking lot exit. Everything that's controlled. It is P.T. Barnum and Bailey circus, and we control it with pom-poms and noise and lights, and fans expect it. I mean, if you went out to a football game and you watched just a football game, it would be, even at high school level.
Yep. There's everything.
It's just so much more. The fan just wants more and more of it, and I think that's going to continue and probably bleed into other geographies. I think this is just going to be the way.
Yeah, brilliant answer. That was terrific.
All right.
Last question. Got to put you on the spot here. Just Philly sports fan. In your opinion, who wins a championship first? Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, or the Union? Who wins the next championship? You will be held accountable for this answer.
But I don't have to defend it. I'm going to go with the Union.
Wild card pick. Actually, not
The
that.
Union's not problem. As soon as you said wild card, you got me scared. I don't think they're probably pretty.
But I'm saying wild card. They may be, like you said, that may be a smaller market than what people are used to. But
as far as winning, I
if
think
you
they
look
have a
at
shot at it.
Their recent history, they definitely have been on the doorstep.
I should go with the Sixers because as far as the season goes, I'd probably the Union. Union maybe. The Sixers maybe have just a little bit too much of an uphill. I don't know.
Yeah, looks a little sketchy for them right now.
Yeah,
Union might be a better pick.
We can edit this part out, right?
So for our viewers, you heard it here first.
Yeah,
Dr. Larson.
Oh boy,
the Union will win the next championship in Philadelphia. So really appreciate you coming out. I know that last question kind of killed you.
Yeah, that was tough.
Before that, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It was an awesome interview, awesome podcast. We loved having you out here, and just thanks for coming.
That was fun. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.